Everybody's coming in. Thank you for being here today. We are launching the webinar now. I'm joined by Jeff. So Jeff, as people are coming in, let's go ahead and jump into this. If you want to move us ahead. So we are here today to talk about how AI can help Google love your content. So one of the interesting things I think from an AI perspective, a lot of marketers don't realize how prevalent AI is already in what they do. But certainly SEO people for years have understood that Google's AI drives their industry, that they are at the mercy of algorithm changes from Google at any given moment that changes the dynamic of the content they create and how to optimize it. So at minimum, for the last decade plus, 2 decades really, we've all been affected by artificial intelligence because the search engines are powered by it. They are built on machine learning algorithms and natural language processing and all these AI applications that determine the result people get when they type in a search or do a voice search. So what we're here to talk about today is an educational demo. The way we position AI in action is you're meant to see a demonstration of technology, but it's so that you can learn how the technology works, how AI works. And nobody is better at describing this than Jeff Coyle. So Jeff, let's jump to our intro slide. So Jeff's going to tell you more about MarketMuse as we're going, but Jeff and I have known each other probably going on a decade now. When I want to know about language technology, AI in search, AI in content strategy, Jeff is my go-to guy. He's done content for our online academy. He's spoken at our conference. They've been a great partner of Marketing AI Institute. So Jeff, welcome. Always fun to do this with you.
Thanks, Paul. I look forward to talking about it and really focusing on, the ways these things are done manually, but then how AI can help and the benefits that it can bring for most organizations who are, whether they have some pieces of the puzzle already implemented or they're just starting out. So hopefully we'll be able to get through really common content workflows today and how they can how you can really benefit from implementing AI.
All right, let's do it. So this is the AI in Action series. This is part of our Marketing AI conference. So we ran the Marketing AI conference August 3rd to the 5th in Cleveland. If you weren't with us, this is sort of an extension of that programming. So we want to do again is one of the best ways I've found to learn AI is to see it at work and then to experience it yourself. So this series is designed to let you see it at work and then to stop as we're going through it. And not only just do a presentation, but in an ideal, we're going to do a little live demo as well if technology cooperates with us. And as we're doing those, to stop and say, okay, how is it doing this? And really help educate you and develop a comprehension of AI through these demonstrations. So today we're doing how AI can help Google love your content. Tomorrow, we've got how AI can power your ad campaigns and campaign performance insights with AI advertising. And then on Thursday, how AI can motivate your customers to engage and act with Persado. And we're going to follow the same format with all of these. If you haven't registered for the next two, you can still jump in and register for them. That is open. Before Jeff gets started, I want to tell you about our Marketing AI conference bundle. So if you missed MACON, we actually recorded the 14 main stage sessions with included some incredible presentations from Google and AWS and EY, Ernst & Young, as well as some really thought-provoking keynotes and some talks on data and analytics. So those 14 sessions are now available on demand. So if you missed MACON and you want to catch up on some of the featured talks, you can actually get that now through our AI Academy for Marketers. So Kathy, I'll throw a link in, and Kathy is with us as well today in chat. So if you need anything, Kathy's there to help you out. And then the final thing I'll say before we go is the thing that people come to the Institute for is to understand AI and then to find technologies to help them pilot and scale in the organization. What we've lacked to date is a step-by-step learning journey. And so what we introduced at MACON this year is this new Piloting AI for Marketers series, which is going to be a 17-part online course. It's about 6 hours of content. It's coming out in October, but you can go learn more about it now. So we're custom designed this to be that next step. Once you've developed an understanding and you see the value of AI, you can actually now take this and walk through how to really learn it and become the leader within your organization to apply it. So if you're interested in learning more about piloting AI, that is available today to explore and pre-order. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. I'm going to stay on camera and kind of hang out. And if there's either some questions that are popping up in chat or Q&A, or if I have some questions, we'll go ahead and stop as we're going. So this will be a little bit more of an interactive session versus, straight webinar with presentation. So Jeff, it's all yours, man.
Perfect. And please go get those recordings from the event. It was so great. I can think of three that off the top of my head that if I had missed them, it would have been, I would be worse for it, frankly. So go get them. I'm not just saying that. Go get those, go check them out. And then, give me some feedback too if you went on my word and got them. But go check those out. They're really, really awesome. Thank you for the lead in, Paul. What we're going to really focus on in thinking about how Google thinks about content differently. I mean, this is just a perfect time to be having this session because Google has just announced that they're going to be making major series of releases that heavily focus on how well the content that you create tells the story of expertise and helps users find their path, regardless of where they are in their information or their buyer journey, or even post-purchase, troubleshooting, implementation. If they are customers of you already and they're still in that kind of ongoing learning process, being able to tell the story of expertise with your content has never been more important. But this isn't new, right? So Google has been evaluating content quality probably longer than you thought they were. From the beginning, if you look at even early goals of Google as a search engine were to tell the story of expertise and authority. Their initial kind of baseline effort on that was using the hypothesis that pages that get more links are more likely to be authoritative than pages that don't. That was the framework of it. It was basically saying, if I were to randomly crawl the web, would I encounter this page when researching that topic? That was the basics of backrub, page rank, the earliest versions of Google and the way that they thought about authority. So obviously, over time, that has to evolve. And what Google basically has determined over time is that content quality is where everything is going. They have to provide things that deliver answers that answer maybe in a situation where the query that somebody puts in doesn't specifically connect with a particular individual intent. Maybe there's fracture of intent. Maybe there's fractured meaning behind the ways that you type something in. You were typing in an acronym and there's 5 different ways people interpret that acronym. What's the most likely acronym that you're looking up? What's the most likely stage in that information journey or buyer journey that you are in, right? All of that connects to quality. And their first phases that are really important to understand started happening, now 14 years ago off of this grid, but really starting to implement quality implementations. First of them were very, very heavy handed. And you saw like over 2010, 2011 with that February rollout, the major February rollout of the Google Panda algorithm that started really looking at low quality content. And that's just evolved into them thinking more about concepts and things and intent and relevance. How does that come to you? On the search results pages, they've become a little bit heavy, right? It's not just ads and links. Google has said, we are no longer about 10 blue links. It's kind of funny because sometimes on search results, you only get about 5, what had historically been blue links, and you get a lot of Google results. You get a lot of ads. You get that right rail, which can be sourced from Google's knowledge graph, which is their way that they think about concepts and topics. It could also come from if in local intent. You can see maps and you can see entries into Google My Business, depending on the intent of your query. There's so many other things you might see on a search results page. But what that really illustrates is that they're really, really thinking about you. How much personalized data do they have about you if you are, logged in, or if you're in a scenario where there is history, or just generally trying to guess right more of the time. And that's where they're headed. And what they've realized over time is that when you provide content that helps a reader, that provides more information about something that they're thinking about, desiring to gain information on, or it will progress them to the next phase of that buyer journey, it's good for business, frankly.
One note there,
Now
Jeff.
that's what we need to think about. Hey, Paul.
Yeah, the one note I wanted to make is, when we think about this timeline, the one thing we're not going to dive deep into today, but that you did address in the language AI panel at Macon,
Right.
is why some of these advancements occurred. And the most recent, and I'm sure some of the stuff you're going to talk about, these continuous updates, is the advancements in what are called these large language models, the ability for Google to truly understand search in the context of what you mean, that has largely occurred in the last few years. So part of the reason the things Jeff is talking about today are possible is because the AI has gotten really, really good in the last 3 years due to advancements at Google and OpenAI and AWS and like some of these other players. So just important context for people is like, why is it changing? It's because the technology is changing. AI is advancing.
Yes. I mean, thank you so much for adding that color because it is important to know why have they gone this direction, not just from user inputs, but because their technology enables them to scale at a level that they couldn't before to predictively assess concepts about quality, about comprehensiveness, about authoritativeness. It's not just like basic matrix math, right? That was the fundamentals. It's not just rule based on these things. And that's what some of these technologies brought was earliest versions of machine learning at Google, where it was saying, hey, introduce a hypothesis, see how it plays out, then have a human review it, then have a group of humans review it, then publish it to the next time we update our index with the other bucket of 15 things and like hope it doesn't break everything. Those are those early updates, right? Now you're in this state of continuous improvement where big rollouts do go out. They go out in phases. And there's really a tremendous amount of additional capabilities of assessing content quality. And I don't, I want to get into some of the details here, but as Paul mentioned, it's because they're able to predict. You're going to see even more of this in, let's say, 2023, 2024, related to originality, related to do these pages actually yield the outcome where somebody came in not knowing something, now that they know something, right? You're going to see a lot more that relates to wins for the person, and that's great for everybody. So the highest quality content is no longer a trope. Hey, do the right thing and you're going to win. Do the right thing. Make sure the infrastructure is appropriate. Make sure you actually know what the right thing is. And that dovetails into what we're talking about today. And what wins is thinking about, do you exhibit expertise? Does your site on the topics you care about, do you tell the story that you own this? You are the person they need to go to. You are, the Paul in deciding what AI technology to implement on your site because he's got that infrastructure. Regardless of what you ask about, he's got the basics of that buyer journey and all the types of technologies and implementation, right? And that is backed up by the content that you present to the search engines. So where you have content about a topic, you're not just trying to win with one page, right? That doesn't make sense. If you truly were the expert on this topic, you would have a collection of content that told the story that all the areas of expertise one would need to know about this. You also know about other related concepts that, would you go to a service provider who only knew about one thing or wrote about one thing on their website? Let's say you're going to a plumber. They have one website that says, I know everything about plumbing, and it's really, really long. And they have no other articles about anything else that they do. They don't even tell you the other services they provide or exhibit the expertise that they have in solving major problems. They're just saying, yep, I know everything about plumbing. It's the basics. And they wrote the basics. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't tell the story that your company is that expert. So you need your site to tell that story. And I know that can sometimes be a hard pill to swallow, that you try to get away with this with one page or just a practice area page or just a definition or just a basic guide because someone told you that was the right thing to do. Well, over time, that's going to decay because it doesn't tell that story. It doesn't bring people to the next phase of the funnel as well. So thinking about these things as clusters, do you have the anchor content that you need, the pillar content that does tell the story that you then know about all the industry specific stuff? You know about all the ins and outs that are later in the funnel. You really, really understand this stuff. If you were building a book on something, does your site exhibit the same level of expertise and comprehensiveness that which you would expect if you were picking up a guide or a reference guide, in addition to some more thoughtful things that would support a buying process? And that's where you get into the, what do you do then? And do you have the right people building this content, right? So I always like to take a step back and try to understand, who do we have on our team and do we have enough people on our team? Because what we're going to be talking about today are manual processes that we're trying to take to automation or to semi-automation or to AI assisted. So these are the types of roles that typically exist on a more mature content strategy and content execution and operations team. You might have situations where you think you have a research process. Well, who's doing that research process? Is it manual? Are you confident with the data points that you're using? Is that a content strategist, or is that actually something you're putting on the writer? Is that writer? Do they understand the business? Is this your GM and they are, doing research kind of in their spare time, or they're relying on some manual data points that they don't know a lot about? Getting into planning and prioritization, the first question is, how do you decide what you're creating and what you're updating? Are you making those decisions based on subjective perspectives, or, what the CEO says, or, what the people think, or are you using data to drive that prioritization? How are you building out then your orders, your architecture, the sources of truth for the writers? Is that something that you're building with technology, or are you manually building content briefs? How effective are they? Your hit rate is what really matters in the bottom of this funnel, because if you do everything manually, great, and you think that's the best way to go, you don't feel like there is a place for assistance, but then you go out and you look, hey, only one out of our last 10 articles has done well. Well, what value did that manual labor do? Did it really improve those performance? Or how confident are you in the performance of the content that you're building every time you publish? And then the last thing, for updating existing content, are you confident that you're using technology or data to update those? Or are you just manually getting to those things when you can? And when you do update those pages, how frequently are they successful? So the punchline here is, what's manual? What's predictive? And how successful is it being? So you got to ask yourself, okay, well, just look at all your 2022 content that you published already and say, how frequently did these articles or these content items achieve their goals? And then backtrack that workflow and say, how many of these processes were manual? Can I find flaws in that? Or do I think that they're perfect? They're just not automated. That's the kind of process that one goes through as part of this discussion.
And I
what
just,
we'll-
Jeff,
yeah,
real quick, I'll
mhm,
just note for
sure.
anyone who's new, and
Mhm.
like we often have people attend these webinars, different sessions where they're coming in, and this is maybe the first time they're even hearing about this. And maybe you're a writer or an editor or a content strategist or a VP of marketing. And what you haven't heard Jeff say in any of this is we're going to replace the humans. Like
No.
that is not the goal. And this is the slide he's about to talk about is a perfect representation of this. It is AI assistance. It is intelligent automation to some degree. And so just know, like, Jeff runs an AI company. I run an AI institute. Neither of us is trying to build a future where machines replace humans. We both agree, and most people in the industry have the point of view, it is an assistive thing. And so, really, if you're coming in new, just have that lens that what we're trying to do is efficiency. Like that is what you're looking for here.
Absolutely. And efficiency gains critical, where the magic happens when you're driving efficiency gains that also improve performance. And this goes for whatever technology you're using. And I'm going to show a few examples of the research and planning and prioritization and briefing and editing and touching content today. But there are also other technologies for test development, for personalization, for generation that can also be extremely assistive to this technology. What it's not is going to do is rush to the end. It's not going to rush to the end and have something that's guaranteed to work. The challenge with content is, if you've ever heard the adage of bullets before cannonballs, right? Bullets that doesn't really work with content. It might work with websites, but it doesn't really work with content. Because if I throw out a bunch of terrible content and hope to see which ones stick, right? And what did that do? Go back a couple slides. It told Google that I'm not a reputable source. It's the crappy stuff that doesn't work over here. While I may have a few that worked. What am I going to do now? Am I really exhibiting expertise by putting out a collection of low quality content and seeing what does well? That process may have worked, in 2008, 2014, but what it's now doing and what it will do in the future is tell the story to Google that you actually aren't the expert. And so you're not going to have that type of longevity. And when you're working with large brands, you can't just get on that aggressive path and aggressively do something that might have a huge fluxing impact right? It might lead to you being in a roller coaster. You don't want a large brand or a medium-sized brand or a growing SaaS company to be in a roller coaster. You want them to grow equivalently with the business. So that's where efficiency gains and hit rate gains, efficiency gains from a standpoint of time, but also of wins, are really, really critical. So if you look at these things in your process, I always like to take a step back and say, what of these things am I either not doing at all, right? Or I'm doing it manually, right? Or I'm fast tracking it maybe with one data point. I'm relying on a data point. What is that data point? It could be my editor in chief's brain. Okay, that's usually a really good thing, right? But it does take a lot of time, and you want to usually supplement something in like a decision-making perspective. What you don't want to be is reliant on a data point that you don't really trust or you can't connect to success. Sometimes you look at teams who are prioritizing or doing research based on the wrong research tool, or a research tool that isn't based in a place of expertise. Maybe it comes from an ad system, right? A lot of people rely on Google AdWords data for this type of research, when that is basically built for the infrastructure of buying ads and understanding how ads work. So it can give you ideas, but it certainly isn't giving you that refined prioritization mechanism or methodology. Some teams aren't using briefs. They're sending hey, go write an article about, electron microscopes. Here's a few words to put in there. And then they get back a draft that doesn't fit what their expectations were. And they're like, hey, that's not what I wanted. And then you have a lot of developmental edit cycles, right? Or you just get it and you're like, okay, well, this was supposed to be for SEO anyway. Let's just publish it. I know a lot of people are sitting there, but that happens so much where you get this draft and you're like, I don't want to go through six or seven iterations on it. Or you do send back that developmental edit. And how does the writer feel? The writer feels like, whoa, that wasn't what you asked for. Let's get on a better page. But you don't have a brief infrastructure, or they just leave and don't write for you again. And then when you go do updates and optimization, a lot of times people think about that as just peppering in words, right? For one reason or another, you think that's going to work. What true optimization is to understand what is current in today's infrastructure. Imagine, Paul, you were writing articles about the basics of natural language generation 2 years ago, and you didn't go back and update that page. I mean, that page is so out of date and such a miserable experience for writers. I don't care how much traffic it gets right now, right? Or for readers, somebody's going to land there and go, whoa, this is 2 years old. How about this artificial intelligence institute keeps the content up to date, right? You're going to have that same experience. So building out processes that automate or get some time savings can allow your more creative team members or the people with that expertise in their brain to excel.
And one quick note, Jeff, just on that previous slide, any AI tech you buy, you should have something that looks like this to make the business case. Like the key the reason you buy AI is to drive efficiency and performance. Like, you're just buying smarter tech. It doesn't matter if it's advertising tech, content tech, email tech. And you should be able to go and say, okay, my process today is this, and I spend 30 hours a month doing it. Once I buy this tech and it achieves like its optimal performance, I'm now going to spend this amount of time. Okay, I'm going to save 20 hours a month, which is $3,000 a month. So I'm willing to pay the $1,000 a month license for this technology. Like, that's as simple as it needs. But you need to have a business case to invest in tech.
I mean, that is right on. And one thing that I've always leaned on is, if you only look at time savings, right? And you can actually make the business case only on time saving, it becomes a really easy conversation with leadership to buy a technology like MarketMuse or like any one. I'm a big fan of many technologies that we use as well, but it's to say, okay, just on the time savings, can I make this case? Now, if it improves performance, and in our case, it's increasing of the amount of content motions we take, how frequently is it successful? I mean, I take teams from 10%. I mean, 10% is about the baseline. It means we write 10 articles and one works, right? Taking teams to 40% on that same metric. I mean, it just changes the way the whole business thinks about content, frankly, because they're like, whoa, this isn't a black box. You're not just guessing. It's actually predictive. And that really is the dream, is to say, I know I'm going to update this page. I know it's going to do better because it is better. I mean, that's the punchline, is we're writing stuff that is better. And it also is gleaning and yielding the outcomes that readers want. And the way that we break this down in our platform, and I'm going to show you this, but I wanted to get into workflows really and be as quickly as I can to find these things. Content inventories are kind of like a bad word in most organizations, right? It's something you do once a year, maybe every 2 years. It's painful. By the time you're done with it, the outcomes aren't even relevant because it took 3 months, right? Or a content audit is so ambiguous. The outcome of a content audit could be like, oh, we had a bad migration 2 years ago, or it could be, we need to update links on these pages. Like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about identifying situations and data observations that give us predictive insights of what to create and what to update. There's certainly outcomes that I'll show you one today about linking recommendations that can be fast tracked. But you've got to get to the point where certainly a migration assessment or an evaluation of, infrastructure are important. And those technical things are one thing, but from a content side, understanding where you have strengths and weaknesses and gaps and opportunities is something that can be fast tracked. It's not a once a year thing to then build your editorial calendar. It's an always on thing. So you can always say, what's my next big quick win? Or how do I grow on this topic? Prioritizing from that, building briefs, like I mentioned, and then also giving tools and solutions so that you can go research a competitive landscape quickly. Something that used to take 40 hours, we have down to 2 minutes or 1 minute. And those are the workflows that I'm really going to focus on in this walkthrough. So I'm going to bounce into the platform after I go through these examples, but here's the ones that I really want to get into. And Paul, we've talked about the various ones that really, really hit me hard and hit you hard because you've done this. I mean, you've done these manual things, right? Is being able to understand all the pages you have and all the topics you have, all the concepts you care about. Where do topics come from? They come from your site, reading it, understanding it. Where do you have great content? Where do you have weak content, right? What pages do you have? And then what topics do those pages cover, right? This process of building an inventory is a painful one and manual. It can be very skewed to the technology side in most cases because it relies on maybe a lower quality crawling technology in-house. It can skew towards, do we have title tags? Do we have various meta tags or meta information? Okay, all those things are good. Technical audits, please, very important. There's a lot of great AI assisted technology, but from a content perspective, you've got to be able to interpret whether you're telling the story of expertise on a concept, what your competitive advantage is on this, right? So if you have a website and it's all about, software, right? You're probably not the expert on roasting coffee beans, right? You have to have quantifiable data to tell you that. So what does that tell you? I shouldn't go write articles about that because that's probably not going to be tremendously relevant. But here's some CRM things that we can lean into. So think about the site level auditing and how that works. And we'll get into some examples of this. The other one is going to be on coverage levels, right? And so this is a very colorful chart and I'm going to show you with examples, but being able to go take a process, right? So we already talked about what 100 to 200 hours is the average content inventory, right, of labor time to get content outputs that maybe don't even glean great recommendations. It's typically based on technical data. It's not based on the quality and comprehensiveness of content. But now sometimes you just want to research a competitive landscape. So what does it take to manually process 20 content items, read them, document pros and cons, and understand those content items? I know because I used to do it manually. It's about 15 to 25 hours, right? And what does it get you? It gets you a biased view of what are the best and the positives and negatives. So what MarketMuse is provides instant access to ways that you can be just as good as your competitors, but also ways that you can differentiate your content against those competitors. So that workflow is an amazing one. So
And
going again,
Jeff, real quick, just so at the top, because people can't really read the small, but you have URLs are the vertical, right? They're just strings of, just URLs.
That's who's ranking number one in Google.
Okay, the don't competitors that are ranking. Got it.
Exactly right. So a common process by search engine optimization professionals is to manually evaluate top performers. And there's a gap there, right? Because You want to understand what it means to be an expert and then overlay it against those competitors.
Okay.
So what we commonly run into is there's advice out there that says, go copy whoever's ranking number one or the top three, right? So the shortcut, because it's not AI assisted, is to go look at that page and then write your version of it, right? Doesn't work, by the way. There's a lot of reasons. But so the way that AI can bring assistance there is to say, hey, what does the best page about this topic actually look like? What does that model for expertise look like? And then show me what those competitors have done. When you do both of those things, it provides a unique differentiated value versus manually doing this, where you might copy a competitor and get yourself in trouble for a number of reasons. And, or doing this the hard way, actually processing it, processing a topic model, processing the competition, which is, for one word, tens of hours of work for just the topic model, tens of hours of work for just the competitive evaluation. So those are the types of workflows that we're talking about improving. Then looking at individual pages. And what you're looking about here is trying to go out and do keyword research, pick out words that are relevant based on your subjective perspective, and then saying, hey, include these. With artificial intelligence, we're able to go out to the world of all information and say, what does it mean to be an expert on this topic? And then have we covered it? So imagine going and manually assessing that, how much error is in there, and then pulling that back in to your writer's kind of heads up view. First of all, who's being tasked to do that? Do you have a research scientist on team? Do you have an expert doing this? Could they be better service? Plus, if you're relegating that to kind of the writer, are they actually able to perform that task effectively and efficiently and consistently? If you've got a writing team of 5 or more, right, you're also going to get varied outcomes from these types of processes at the writer or editor level. And then building out sources of truth in the form of briefs. So having a content brief that tells the story of expertise, tells the story of the questions that need to be answered, et cetera. And that source of truth being sent from the editor or the content strategist to the writer gives us the outcomes that we need. So we can actually say, did you hit on all these things? Have you exhibited expertise? And then were you able to spend more time building a great narrative and not so much time doing keyword research that could be flawed and biased? So being able to have these things all automated, building a content brief, some people, we did a research study of, I think it was 1,000 firms in in-house teams. The average was, I believe it was between 3 and 5 hours for a content brief. And those were ones that were missing major sections that we use in our technology.
Or what length of post? Like, are we talking about like 1,000-word post? They're spending 3 to 5 hours on the brief?
Exactly right. Yeah, 1,000 to 2,000. Exactly right. And then the last piece I'll touch on is strategic. This is where it's real hard to quantify, but being able to say, what do I need to do to get to a quick win? People, have no way of looking at data and saying, this is an easy win for my team. Or how do I achieve this goal? How do I own this topic? How much content do I need to build? Or I know I'm getting killed by this competitor. How do I get ahead of this risk that I've got on my site? Or finally, somebody asks me to go write this. Maybe it's my CEO, maybe it's my head of editorial. How do I put our team's best foot forward? And how do I make that the standard for my team? All of these are horribly painful manual processes that use data that are not consistent and reliable. And so using artificial intelligence to think about this entire process is give me the data in a way that's on demand and approachable that reflects all the stuff that I care about. Allow me to prioritize it based on the things you're looking at here, right? The reasons why for content. Now, let me build that brief that tells the story of that source of truth for writers. And then last, execute on common tasks. What are those common tasks? Little keyword research, competitive analysis, updating a page, link analysis, questions analysis, maybe to give me ideas for questions that I need to answer. All of those things we accelerate so that no matter who you are and what stage you're in that buy cycle, you can say, I didn't do this manually. If I had done this manually, it would have been prone to error, slow, and not have the performance outputs that we expect. And so that's really most of the stuff I'm going to cover before I hop into the demo. But Paul, what are some of the questions that have come up before I hop in?
Yeah, so as you're pulling that up, we just had one come in. If AI-based MarketMuse tool versus manual is used for different stages of content creation, how content success improves and how is the improvement measured? So I think what we're getting here is a spirit of like, okay, so if I'm doing it one way now and then I'm going to get an AI tool to do it, how do I, what are maybe like, what are my KPIs to determine? Like one, we talked about is efficiency, like, okay, we're spending less time to do the thing,
Mhm.
but what else are we looking at in terms of how you measure the success of the AI assisted content strategy and production?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. And you see kind of a sneak peek of the Marketing AI Institute site in our on-demand inventory. And I'll walk through this in a second of some of the things that you should expect to see. And imagine this is your site. So you're thinking about, I know all my words, all my pages, all my page topic combinations. And so in this case, we, analyze 75,000 page topic combinations across 1,100 pages, and then we have 27,000 prioritized concepts to consider, or topics or keywords, and for various reasons why. And I can get into some of those in a second. So, to your great question, by the way, and I love this question, every page has a reason. Your part of your briefing process needs to be that you understand that every page has a why. So it needs a goal. That goal may be different for each page. A couple examples of this are maybe you have a page that is going to be a support structure. If you remember my topic cluster slide, so imagine it's the support structure for your main page. So that means that during that main long form guide that you're going to write, you're going to mention something but you can't really get into it based on the narrative and the structure of that page. So you need an auxiliary support page to tell the story of expertise. Some examples of that, maybe it gets into a deep dive on a particular question or middle of the funnel or an industry specific dynamic, which would kind of blow up the narrative. So you're writing about CRM software. You have a link for CRM software for, breweries. It's going to be weird if you really get into a deep dive on that industry specific. Or maybe you talk about call center management. Well, it's going to be weird if you talk about call center management and that dynamic. So you need that link. Maybe you don't expect that support page to get a lot of entrance traffic, but you do need it to exhibit expertise, right? So you got to document, hey, we do expect that this is going to be part of a foundation building effort. We do expect this is going to rank well for these topics and get this much traffic. Or maybe it's not, it's just wayfinding. That's why traditional audits fail so much, by the way, to this question, is because they expect that the same goals are applied to every page. So what do people do? They delete pages that don't get any traffic. That's a terrible idea for so many reasons, because it's basically diminishing your overall authority and power. All the content you have works together on a particular topic so that, I always describe this as you're not allowed to get invited to the party unless you've illustrated expertise. So as someone who managed a website of technology definitions, right? I couldn't imagine getting definitions to rank for what is X unless I had the entire funnel covered on that topic. Think about that. So over here, I covered pre-funnel awareness, pre-funnel awareness, awareness, consideration, purchase, post-purchase, troubleshooting, implementation, and all that post-sale doc content. There's a reason we had a forum for questions and answers so that we could cover and win on the term, so that we can cover and win on that definition page, right? So you're not allowed to be there at the bottom of the funnel unless you're there for the entire funnel. Just think about that as we dive in. Great question. So punchline, the things you're looking to improve. How many content items did I publish, or how many updates did I publish, right? And how frequently did those win according to the goals that I set for myself? That's your goal. I call that content efficiency rates. You also want to improve time, overall time touching. You also want to take a realistic approach to measuring the cost of content. I could get into that for a long time and we don't have it today. But if you think content costs less than, say, $1,000 a page, really do a deep dive and look at all hands that touch it. It's not just what the writer bills you. It has huge, huge overhead. So get real about costs per page, and then get real on your cost per effective page if you're only punching at 10%, because whatever number you come to, your content actually costs 10x that to make a performance. So great question. I am in the platform and I want to dive in, and I know we're on time, but I'm going to show you 4 or 5 workflows that will really just speed up your time. So imagine in this situation, we have analyzed 75,000 page topic combinations. First of all, manually, not even a chance, right? You're not even going to come close. What might you do here? You might think about the words you like or you want to own or your CEO wants you to rank for, right? And you might go research the keywords, might research the competitors, see what they're doing, see what you're going to do, and then take a shot at a page for each of those or a collection of pages. That's the traditional manual process. First of all, tremendously rife with errors, inefficient, but it's really not giving you any levels of understanding of what you have or where you have a competitive advantage. The most important thing about organic search rankings today, right? If you think about content quality and you care about content quality, is how much authoritativeness and competitive advantage you have. How much topic authority do you have? So how do you get to that, right? How do we measure it? We look at your breadth of coverage, your depth of coverage, the quality of your coverage, how much momentum you have, as well as off-page factors like links. All of those go into telling me where I have authority and opportunity. So what that allows me to do is to analyze all of my pages really, really quickly. Okay. So I can do a page level audit on all the pages that relate to analytics on Paul and Mike's wonderful site, right? And I can see, ooh, I've got a dominant page. I've also got an 11-page cluster here. I've got the haves and the have-nots. I've got really great high quality content that has huge upside advantage. And by the way, these aren't actual dollars in Marketing Artificial Intelligence Institute's pocket. These are pay-per-click replacement values. So how much would it cost to go buy this traffic? So I can dive in and learn about all the things that relate to these pages on the fly. I can also look at them because of data observations. I can look at my pages that have a lot of wins or a little bit of wins. I can do that inventory in seconds because I have this dynamic. So let's just look at one of these where I've connected the dots to predictive analytics and try to get to all the things that this page performs well for. Right. So very, very quickly, I can look at all 500 concepts that this page is connected to. And I can say, which of these things am I doing really well on? Which of them do I need to build more on? What is that telling me? I need to update this page or I need to build support structure. So I'm getting to that very, very quickly. What MarketMuse personalized difficulty metric gives me is how hard is it going to be for me to win, not just how hard is it for anyone to win, right? So being able to look at all the pages that connect to this page topic combinations very, very quickly, what I can build very quickly is a plan for updates and creation that are going to support the cluster for that page. That page is already a beacon of light. It's so powerful. Now, how do I support it? I can build that very, very quickly. That's a process that only the most elite, maybe top 0.5% of content strategists and SEOs could do manually at all. Now it's available via artificial intelligence with a few clicks, right? And that's a process that really, like I mentioned, there's a very, very small elite list of people who could take that process and go in and look at a page. What are the related topics? Which ones are we winning? Which ones are we losing? The ones we're losing, can we update this page? The ones we're winning, let's write some support, right? I mean, that's a quick win. On the topic side, there's a traditional search engine optimization process called striking distance. Striking distance is saying, hey, what stuff am I ranking on page 2 for? Let's improve it. And maybe I'll rank on page 1, right? We've all heard that one, right? What MarketMuse can do is it can advance that by adding measures that can only lead to more predictability, right? So what we do is we look at authority on the topic, as well as the competitive advantage we talked about, plus our metric for how hard it will be for us to rank. And what that tells us is not only are we in striking distance, but our artificial intelligence and technology has told us that we have a higher chance of being successful on this topic. So there's a chance for us to win more effectively. And so what we do is we go out and we do this striking distance on its own without this metric. And then we go look at it striking distance with authority. Teams that update using the predictive metric, those pages grow at a 2 to 6x times the ones where they just randomly pick stuff that was striking distance. Okay, put that in your brain. Oh my gosh, right? So not only was it that 2 to 6x times improvement over just looking at rankings, because I consider that tail wagging the dog a little bit, right? I'm looking on page 2. What if the page 1 is extremely hard and I don't have any infrastructure. What if I got lucky with this page? That happens a lot, right? So I'm ranking 11th, but I've only written one article about this topic. And the first page is a lot of people with a lot of breadth and depth of coverage. I can go update that as much as I want, and I'm not going to grow. So I might waste a lot of time. Understanding my authority is going to fast track that process as well as make it more predictive. So when I was looking through this page for Paul, for example, I analyzed stuff where I was ranking on page 2, but where I had a huge advantage. So I can confidently say to Paul, all of these concepts within this filter, this filtered view, are ones that if we really dive in and dedicate efforts on, we have an outsized advantage to win. So focusing on marketing AI tools, focusing on AI advertising platforms, focusing on generated content, natural language generation software are going to provide Paul a unique differentiated advantage. More of the content he writes on those topics will be successful. More of the updates he makes will be successful versus the average site. And we can more predictably invest in those content items. So
And
far,
I
so
would just
good.
share like, yeah, and we're going to try and do like rapid fire questions here at the
Sure.
end. So if you've been submitting in, we'll probably leave like 5 to 7 minutes and do rapid fire. The one thing I'll note is that is a key part of our Institute strategy. So we have published like 800 or 900 articles, and republishing. If you don't have a republishing strategy, it is a critical part of what we do. We republish 1 to 2 posts a week that maybe they're 2, 3 years old. And we do it by using AI to tell us how to enhance that post. So to Jeff's example of natural language generation. What is natural language generation? If we wrote it 3 years ago, it might have had GPT and 2 in it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we could go and say, okay, let's just add GPT-3. But what MarketMuse may tell us is you also need to address large language models. You need to address, like, it may tell us to address things we weren't even thinking about. And so we go in, we update that post, we republish it with a new date, and voila, Google loves it as long as it's valuable, as long as it's expert content and it's adding value to the user. So again, just a quick takeaway: if you don't have a republishing strategy,
Right.
you should get one. It's a very valuable tool.
Got it. Paul, thanks for bringing that up. As we transition to some of these workflows, and then I'm going to finish off by showing a brief before we get into the rapid fire perspective. But you just said it. You just described what I just did, what I'm showing here. It's to say, okay, well, what is AI advertising platforms about right now? What is this concept about? What are the concepts that need to be covered on the site or on a page that covers this well, right? So I can look at keyword variants that live within these, but from a topic model perspective, if I wrote a great piece of page, a collection of pages or an individual page about our AI advertising platforms, and I don't talk about marketing automation or programmatic advertising or digital marketing or digital transformation or customer experience or predictive analytics, it's not that comprehensive. I didn't really tell the story of expertise. So this solution gives me the ability to agnostically of my site understand any concept. So I have the kind of the knowledge of all content baked into one interface here to say, what's this about? Right now I can build that out, understand the differentiation, understand the distribution of when somebody's writing about this, what's the likelihood they're going to include this topic. So if you think about language models, it's trying to predict that next word. We're trying to say, if you truly were an expert, what concepts would naturally be covered, predictively be covered, and that you can apply. Building this model manually, first of all, I used to do it tens and tens of hours to get one that's super high fidelity and appropriate for application. I mean, it just wasn't possible. We're also able to take that approach and apply it to all the pages that are currently ranking in organic search. So what this tells you is all the words in our topic model, which of the pages in that top 20 in organic search mention that concept. So when you see that everybody's mentioned it, that's called, that's like the table stakes. If you write this article and you don't talk about artificial intelligence, it's not a really good one, or marketing or campaign, right? But you start to see a lot of red. And for me, the money is in the red lines here because that's stuff that our topic model says was relevant, but nobody's talking about. So not only are we able to give you reasons why everybody else does it, that's kind of like at least this, the table stakes, we can also give you ways to differentiate your content. This alone is that 20 plus 20 hour process distilled in 1 minute. Being able to edit a page then as a result of these data points becomes extremely powerful too. So I can look at an individual page and understand it. So where did I include concepts that illustrate expertise? That's where you see highlighting. I like to call this the Fluff Finder too, because if you see an area that's a lot of no green, maybe that was a little bit of your little opinion, or it wasn't directly relevant to this concept. Totally cool if you like it and it's relevant, but it maybe didn't add value to this section or on this topic, which is totally okay. This is a beautiful example because we're actually outperforming MarketMuse's recommendations. See, Paul, I'm giving you the props. This is a better page than MarketMuse would have even expected. So we're going above and beyond. We can also go head to head with any competitor on this to say, okay, what does in this case Springboard do? How can I be equal to or better than them head to head? Or what are things that I didn't do that they did? So in their case, they cover roles on a team, including data analysts. We did not. Clearly an area we can expand or write about. The last thing I'll mention is we do a questions analysis. We can actually invert prose into questions, or we can actually extract questions from content to tell ways that we can answer questions throughout an article. So this is exhaustively manual process. A lot of times it's done with scraping. We sort by relevance, so it really tells the story of common things people care about if they were an expert writing thought leadership coverage across the funnel. And that's why you see all the concepts. I love that the first example was what's the role of it? It really like, okay, did I cover that, right? The last thing, and I mentioned, is internal and external linking is critical. Being able to connect the dots between your articles. Understanding in this case, what does the topic model look like and what are my best pages? So in seconds, I can understand if I'm going to write an article about big data analytics, what does my cluster look like today? And which pages need to be interconnected to give me the best possible outcome? And go look up, if you're interested in looking up a true page rank or internal links page rank, go check that out. This is the only application that truly applies that topic modeling concept in SaaS. And so it gives you a way to understand that, whoa, if I'm going to write about big data analytics, I need to cover unstructured data. My best page on unstructured data is this article about data cleansing. Wow. Okay. That is a almost unmanageable process manually. And I was able to do it in seconds. The brief we create tells that story all in one view. So I can actually deliver an article that gives me a framework. What's my minimum content score word count? But I can also get into what questions need to be answered. What recommendations do I have for headlines? Both competitive references as well as differentiated value. Subheadings, same thing. Competitive references, differentiated value. What topics need to be included? And what internal and external links need to be part of that narrative? The cool thing about the brief also is that writers, if they ever have a question, where did this data come from? It always has a backup. It's not just, their editor who wrote it in the Google Doc. Here's where the data came from. They can always look at the reference to fast track their work, be more confident, and yield a more effective team structure. I buzzed through that last part. So hopefully this illustrates you can take this from manual to automation in a reliable way that's going to yield outcomes that you never imagined. Let's answer these rapid fire questions.
Yeah. So I think the quick takeaway for me, obviously, is if you're still doing all this manual, hopefully you now realize that that is probably not sustainable and that you could start with a single use case, but there are smarter ways to do content strategy, content production, content optimization, content assessment. Just take the next step. Okay, let's rapid fire this thing. Okay.
I love it. And thank you everyone to being here, and let's answer some questions.
Yep. All right. We addressed where we can register. There's a link there. If you didn't, Kathy can send that back out. White papers, Kathy shared some of those in the chat. So check the chat if you're looking for some additional resources. Other languages, we had a couple actually related to this. Do you mess with other languages, or would they use another translation service, AI translation service, to then translate languages?
Our applications we have Spanish and Latin American Spanish in our applications, not in our inventory yet, but that's going to be coming in 2023. If you do the work in English and translate, translocate, or transcreate, we have tremendous success stories there. Unfortunately, quite frequently it is because the difficulty scores are skewed downwards. They're actually easier in a lot of cases in foreign languages based on dynamics. But yeah, I would recommend if you're going to use the inventory data, use it, then translate. But then we do have Spanish in applications. More languages are coming actually in 2023. And I'm really excited about that. The reason why that takes a little bit longer for us is we actually build language models for each one.
Okay.
We don't translate. Every other platform that kind of, they take a data set and then they translate it. We actually won't do that because we feel the quality of the recommendations isn't good enough.
A couple related to deleting stuff. You were talking about not deleting stuff. Previously said weak pages were a problem. So, and then there was somebody else asked a follow on that was related to like old products that aren't in the market anymore and whether or not they keep those. So just real quickly, do we keep old pages that aren't that relevant anymore? Is it better to just delete them, or is it better to leave them up and, let Google?
Well, there's a lot of answers to that question, but here's a quick one. Right? If you're deleting something because of its current rankings or traffic, it's typically the wrong solution. If you delete something and do not redirect it, it's typically going to be wrong. If you're deleting something solely on the basis of the fact that it's old, it's typically going to be a wrong choice.
Okay.
So there's almost always going to be an update, migrate, redirection strategy that's going to raise all boats and de-risk. The key on deletion is deletion brings risk for a lot of reasons. Imagine it's a jaw with teeth and you're literally pulling out a tooth, right? And that by its own, that tooth could have been really, really useful. All right. But you don't know. And that's one thing we do. We tell you which pages are valuable. Imagine Paul going in and knowing your page authority metrics, right? You might delete a 1 or a 0 MarketMuse page authority, but are you ever going to really delete a MarketMuse page authority 20? I mean, it basically, I have a graphic and it looks like, it really looks like you've got you've severed a leg, right? So.
All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour. I have probably a half dozen more questions, but maybe we'll do is answer these in a follow on and share them with everybody. But thank you for being here, especially everyone who stuck around all the way to the top of the hour. We really appreciate it. Hopefully this is really valuable to you. Jeff, thank you as always. Everything will be available on demand. We will email everyone with access to not only the slides, but the video of this. And like I said, maybe we'll have Jeff come on and answer some of these other questions from everyone. But don't hesitate to reach out to Jeff and his team if you just want to ask direct related to the product or the company. So thank you, everyone. Jeff, awesome. We'll do it again soon, man.
I love these examples and thank you. If you've got specific questions, send them my way. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.